I still remember the night those words left his mouth. "Just go with it," he said. So soft, so calm, as if what he was asking of me was something small, as if it wouldn't sit in my chest for years afterward, like a quiet ache I could never fully name. If I close my eyes today, I can still hear his voice. Gentle, but distant, almost like he was hiding behind his own words. It happened in our living room on a night that was supposed to be ordinary. The lamp on the side table glowed a warm yellow, the kind that usually made our home feel safe. But that night, even the soft light felt heavy. There was something unsaid in the air, something I didn't yet understand. I remember how he avoided my eyes. He had this habit. Whenever something bothered him, he would smooth the edge of the couch cushion with his thumb. And that night, he did it again and again until the fabric dipped from the pressure. "Just go with it," he whispered, and he tried to give me a smile. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. I think that was the moment I knew something in our marriage had shifted. Not broken, not yet, but shifted. Like a tiny crack you can't see but can feel when you run your hand over it. The strange thing is, I didn't argue. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't ask why. Maybe I was scared of the answer. Maybe I already knew the truth but wasn't brave enough to hear it out loud. Sometimes the softest words are the ones that hurt the most. Not because they are cruel, but because they reveal how far apart two people have quietly grown. As he spoke those words, something inside me, a kind of quiet trust, trembled. It didn't crumble, not yet, but it trembled. And I remember thinking, why does it feel like he's asking me to pretend? Why does it feel like there's something he isn't telling me? That night was the beginning of a story I never thought would be mine. A story of love that stretched thin. A story of silence that spoke louder than anger. A story of a marriage held together by words that were supposed to keep the peace, but instead left a wound that took years to understand. Even now, after everything, his voice echoes in my mind. Just go with it. And I still wonder, go with what? Go where? And why did he think I needed to? I should probably begin by telling you what our life looked like before that night, because stories like this never start with one moment. They build slowly, like quiet waves that appear harmless, until you realize the tide has pulled you farther from shore than you meant to go. My name isn't important. What matters is that, for most of my marriage, I believed we were steady. Not perfect, of course. No couple is perfect. But steady. The kind of steady you think will last forever because it has lasted long enough to feel safe. My husband, Daniel, was a calm man. Soft-spoken, thoughtful, and patient in ways that made others trust him. He worked at the local hardware store, managing the front office. It wasn't glamorous, but he liked it. He liked routines, familiar faces, and things that made sense when you put them together piece by piece. I used to joke that he was a puzzle person, and I was a picture person. He focused on the details, while I held on to the big idea. We balanced each other that way. Our home was small, a single-story house with cream-colored walls and creaking wooden floors. The kind of place where memories linger in the corners. The kitchen was my kingdom. I kept it warm with the smell of tea and soft bread, and sometimes with quiet humming when I thought no one was listening. We had been married for 14 years by the time that night happened. 14 years of dinners at the same old table, laundry folded on Sunday afternoons, and little jokes whispered across pillows in the dark. To anyone on the outside, it would have looked like the picture of stability. And in a way, it was. But marriages don't fall apart in one sweeping moment. They drift, the way leaves drift from a tree, one at a time, until you finally look around and realize the branches are bare. Looking back, I can see the small signs I missed. I can see the moments I brushed away because I didn't want to think too hard about them. Maybe you'll recognize some of them if you've lived through something similar. There were evenings when Daniel came home later than usual. Not very late, just late enough to make me wonder. But he always had an explanation. A customer needed help. Someone's order was delayed. A delivery truck broke down. His explanations always made sense. They were always practical. And because he wasn't a man who lied easily, I believed him. There were days when he was quiet, staring at the table as though it held answers he couldn't say aloud. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd shake his head, give me a small smile, and say, "Just tired." I let myself believe that too. We had good times, of course. We laughed often, especially on weekend mornings when he'd make pancakes that were always slightly uneven. He'd pretend to defend them. "They taste the same no matter the shape," he'd say, flipping one with exaggerated skill. I'd laugh and tell him that cooking was about love, not perfection. And he'd reply, "Then you must love me a lot because I'm still trying." Those moments were real, honest. They kept me grounded, made me think our foundation was stronger than any passing concern. But love, I've learned, doesn't disappear all at once. It fades in the corners, in the shadows between conversations, in the pauses we pretend not to hear. Before the night, he said, "Just go with it." Something had already begun to shift, but neither of us wanted to name it. Outside of our home, our life was simple. We didn't have children, though we had tried. That was one of the unspoken aches between us. The doctor had explained the difficulty gently, with diagrams and quiet sympathy. She said it was impossible, but unlikely. Daniel handled it in silence. He never blamed me. He never said anything unkind. But there were nights when he sat at the edge of our bed, his shoulders curled forward as if he were holding in a sorrow he didn't know how to share. I would touch his back lightly, hoping he felt comfort instead of pity. He would take my hand, press it once, and whisper, "It's all right. We're all right." But sometimes late at night, I'd hear him shifting, restless, and I'd wonder if he believed his own words. Not having children changed our relationship in ways neither of us could fully say out loud. There was an emptiness in the house, a quiet that felt heavier as the years passed. And though we loved each other, the silence sometimes sat between us like a closed door. Still, we managed. We made our own routines, our own little world. We found joy in small things. Evening walks, old movies, sharing a blanket on cold nights. Our life was gentle. So gentle that I didn't notice how fragile it had become. There was another part of our life that mattered, one I didn't pay enough attention to at first. His family. Daniel's mother had passed away many years ago, and he was raised mostly by his father and an aunt. His father, a quiet, proud man named Harold, lived 2 towns over in a small white house with a porch that creaked louder than its owner. We visited often, mostly on Sundays. Harold liked me. At least, I always thought he did. He wasn't a man who spoke praise easily, but he showed affection by the way he insisted I sit in the comfortable chair, or how he'd save the last piece of pie just because she likes it. But as Harold grew older and weaker, Daniel became increasingly involved in his care. At first, it was practical things: grocery runs, cleaning the porch, fixing a loose railing. But over time, the visits turned into something heavier. Long afternoons, sitting in silence, phone calls at odd hours, and late-night drives when his father sounded confused or frightened. I understood. Truly I did. Family is important, and Daniel felt responsible for the man who had raised him with such firm love. But care like that changes people. It changes relationships. It changes priorities. One day, Harold fell. A simple slip in the kitchen, but it scared him deeply. From then on, he called Daniel more often. He needed reassurance, guidance, company, even when nothing was wrong. It was as if the fall unlocked an old loneliness in him. Daniel responded with tenderness. He always did. But a part of him slowly began to drift toward the quiet world of his father and away from the quiet world of our marriage. I remember sitting on the couch one evening, watching him talk to his father on the phone. His posture was different, leaning forward, protective, like a son trying to hold up the sky. When he hung up, I asked gently, "Everything okay?" He nodded, but he didn't look at me. "Yeah, he just needs me more these days." And I knew he wasn't wrong. I didn't realize how much more would become. There was one last piece to the story, the part I didn't understand until much later. A woman named Claire. She wasn't someone Daniel talked about often, not at first. She worked part-time at the hardware store, helping with inventory and scheduling. She was polite when I met her, friendly with kind eyes and a soft smile. Nothing about her seemed threatening. But Daniel mentioned her in passing more and more. "Claire helped organize the back room today. Claire has a good memory for numbers. Claire suggested a new tracking system." Each time it sounded harmless, and maybe it was. Maybe I only noticed because I was listening too closely. Maybe I sensed something before he did. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was more like a whisper inside me saying, "Pay attention." But I didn't. Not then. I trusted the life we had built. I trusted the quiet ways he showed he cared. I trusted the simple steadiness of our marriage. I thought trust was enough. I thought love would anchor us. And maybe it could have, if we had talked more. If we had been brave enough to face the small cracks instead of smoothing them over like the edge of that couch cushion he touched on the night everything began to unravel. That night, the night he said, "Just go with it," didn't come suddenly. It came after months of slow drifting, after months of unspoken worry, after months of changes we pretended we didn't see. And now, looking back, I can see every step that led to it. I just didn't know that the quiet life I thought was steady was already tilting, 1 degree at a time. I had always believed that conflict in a marriage came from loud moments, raised voices, slammed doors, or arguments that left bruises on the heart. But I learned something different as the months unfolded. In my marriage, the conflict grew quietly, softly. So softly that if someone had asked me then whether something was wrong, I would have smiled and said, "No, we're just going through a busy time." But that busy time stretched into something much more painful. It started with the phone calls. At first, they were simply more frequent. Daniel's father called in the mornings now, sometimes in the afternoons too. I didn't mind. I knew older people often needed reassurance, even when things were fine. But then the calls began arriving during dinner, during late evenings, sometimes even past midnight. Daniel always answered. His voice would go soft and gentle, almost like the version of him I used to hear when he spoke to me in our early years together. A voice full of care. A voice I missed without even realizing it. "Everything okay?" I would ask after he hung up. "Yeah, he just needed to hear someone." But I noticed something. Whenever he talked to his father, there was a heaviness in his tone, a tired kind of devotion. Whenever he talked to me afterward, there was distance. Not coldness, just distance. Like turning his attention toward me required effort. Like there was something weighing him down that I didn't have access to. One evening, as he put his phone down, I reached for his hand across the table. "You seem stressed," I whispered. He gently pulled his hand away to rub his forehead. "Just tired," he said. "It's nothing." It was such a small moment, a tiny thing, but it made something sink inside me. He used to hold my hand all the time. Around this time, Daniel talked about the store more often, and when he talked about the store, the name Claire was almost always woven into the story. Claire organized the billing sheets today. Claire figured out a mistake in last week's orders. Claire stayed late to help with the inventory. Claire told me this funny story about her nephew. It wasn't that he praised her excessively. It wasn't even that he sounded excited. It was the frequency, the slow, steady way her name became familiar to my ears. I didn't want to be the jealous wife. I didn't want to question him over something that might have been innocent. But sometimes when he spoke about her, he had a softness in his voice that made me feel less. Not less loved, exactly, but less seen. One night, as we got ready for bed, I said gently, "You talk a lot about Claire these days." Daniel paused mid-motion, not for long, just a second. But I saw it. A flicker of something. Surprise? Guilt? Annoyance? "He's just helpful around the store," he said. "That's good," I replied, forcing a smile I didn't quite feel. "It sounds like she's dependable." He nodded, but he didn't meet my eyes. And he didn't mention her for several days afterward. Not out of respect, out of avoidance. There's a kind of silence that feels peaceful, the kind that settles between two people who feel safe with each other. And then there's a different kind of silence, one that feels like standing on opposite sides of a closed door. That was the silence that grew between us. We still ate dinner together. We still asked each other about our days, but the conversations were shorter, lighter, missing the warmth they once had. Sometimes he would sit at the table long after finishing his meal, staring at something I couldn't see. "Daniel," I would say softly, "you're quiet tonight." He'd give me a tired smile. I'm okay, but his eyes told me otherwise. Other nights, I would find him in the garage, sitting on the old wooden stool, staring at the floor with his elbows resting on his knees. I would knock lightly on the doorframe. "Are you all right?" He always said the same thing. "Yeah, just thinking." Thinking about what? I didn't know. He didn't offer, and I was too afraid to push him. Sometimes, the things we avoid asking become the things that break us. One Sunday, Harold had a particularly difficult day. He seemed confused, mixing up dates and forgetting small things. Daniel spent hours helping him sort his medication and calming him down. When he returned home that evening, he looked drained. Not physically, emotionally. He tossed his keys onto the counter and leaned against it with a long exhale. "Rough day?" I asked softly. He gave a short nod. "Yeah, he's getting worse." I walked toward him. "Come sit. I made tea." He didn't move. Instead, he sighed again, heavier this time. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." he whispered. My heart ached. I reached for him, pressing my palm against his shoulder. You don't have to do it alone, I said. We can figure this out together. He looked up at me then. For a moment, I saw the man I had married, trusting, open, willing to share his burden. But the moment passed. He shook his head. No, he said quietly. Some things you just have to handle on your own. He walked past me before I could say anything else. The sound of his footsteps echoed down the hallway. And just like that, the door between us closed a little more. Over the next several weeks, Daniel started staying later at the store. It wasn't drastic at first, an hour here, an hour there. But gradually, those hours stretched into longer evenings. Sometimes he came home after dark with the explanation, we had a shipment issue, or inventory took longer than expected. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But I had lived with that man for 14 years. I knew his rhythms, his habits, the smallest changes in his voice. And his voice was different now. He was present, but not here. He sat at our table, but his mind was somewhere far away. He slept in our bed, but his spirit felt miles from mine. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. His side of the bed was empty. I found him in the living room, sitting in the dark, his phone in his hands. The glow of the screen reflected in his tired eyes. When he saw me, he quickly locked the screen and set the phone down. You couldn't sleep? I whispered. He shook his head. Just couldn't shut my mind off. Anything you want to talk about? No, it's fine. That was his answer to everything now. It's fine. I'm fine. We're fine. But nothing felt fine. There was a particular day that stands out. A day that planted a seed of worry in me that I couldn't shake afterward. Daniel had left for work earlier than usual. He said they needed to reorganize the back room before a shipment arrived. It sounded reasonable, but something about his tone made me uneasy. He gave me a quick peck on the cheek. Too quick, too absent, and left. The hours passed slowly. I found myself checking the clock more than usual. My mind kept drifting, imagining things I didn't want to imagine. Around noon, I decided to drive to the market near the store. I needed flour, but truth be told, I also needed peace of mind. As I parked the car, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Daniel's truck wasn't there. It wasn't anywhere near the store. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe he stepped out. Maybe he ran an errand. Maybe the truck was in for maintenance. But my heart didn't believe any of those explanations. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty parking spot where his truck usually sat. A deep, uneasy feeling washed over me. I didn't go inside the store. I didn't want to look for answers I wasn't ready to hear. Instead, I turned around, bought my flour, and drove home. All the way home, I tried to calm myself. But some feelings don't listen to reason. Some feelings settle into your bones. The biggest change, the one that hurt the most, came slowly. Daniel stopped touching me. Not completely. He still gave me a kiss before leaving for work. He still hugged me on especially difficult days. But the small touches, the soft hand on my back, the fingers brushing mine, the absent-minded leaning against me, those disappeared. It was as though he had forgotten the language our bodies once spoke fluently. One evening, as we watched a movie, I rested my head on his shoulder. It was something I used to do all the time. But that night, he didn't lean into me. He didn't wrap his arm around me. He stayed still, almost rigid. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "I'm a little tired," he said, lifting my head gently and standing up. I nodded, but inside something cracked. When the bedroom door closed behind him, I whispered into the empty room, "What are you running from, Daniel? Why won't you let me in?" Of course, the silence didn't answer. One afternoon, while Daniel was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone. I wasn't looking for trouble. I didn't want to invade his privacy. But the name on the screen made my breath catch. Claire. Just her name. No message preview, no emoji, nothing suspicious at all. And yet, my heart began to pound. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Then I stepped away from it as if distance could protect me from the whirlwind inside my chest. I didn't look again. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't read anything. But the damage was already done. Something inside me whispered, "This is it. This is the beginning of whatever comes next." When he came out of the shower, he glanced at the phone. His expression didn't change. Not obviously, anyway, but his shoulders tensed for a fraction of a second. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said too quickly. Then he turned the phone over so the screen faced down. That tiny gesture felt louder than any confession. By then, I knew something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Wrong in a way that couldn't be fixed with a single conversation or a gentle touch. The distance between us had grown into a space neither of us crossed. Sometimes I would lie awake next to him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. It used to comfort me. But now it felt like listening to someone who was physically near, but emotionally far, far away. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that stress could explain the changes, that worry for his father could explain the silence, that exhaustion could explain the distance. But Daniel wasn't just tired, he was absent. And I, for the first time in my marriage, felt married to someone who wasn't fully mine anymore. 10. The conflict reaches its quiet peak. The weeks kept passing, each one adding another layer of tension. We talked less, we touched less, we laughed less. Meals became short and quiet. Evenings felt longer than they used to. One night, after another silent dinner, I asked gently, "Daniel, are we okay?" He paused. Too long. Then he nodded. "Yeah, we're fine." But his voice was too soft, too controlled, too careful. It sounded like someone trying to hold something together with his bare hands. And that's when I realized the conflict we were living through wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet, silent, invisible to others, but painfully present to us. It was a conflict made of drifting hearts, unspoken fears, and a truth we were both afraid to face. And all of it Every moment, every silence was leading us toward the night he finally said those 6 words. Just go with it. The night everything changed. I don't know what I expected to happen the morning after I found my daughter standing in the kitchen, pale as the moon with those strange bruises on her arms. Maybe I thought she'd come downstairs and open up on her own. Maybe she'd feel safe enough to talk. Maybe everything I'd seen was just a misunderstanding. But the truth hits you in a way guesses never can. That morning, she didn't come downstairs at all. I woke up at 6:30, like always. The house was quiet. So quiet, I could hear the refrigerator humming. My daughter's door was still shut. I tapped lightly. "Sweetheart, you awake?" Nothing. "Breakfast is almost ready." I lied. I hadn't even opened the fridge. Still nothing. A mother hears silence differently. It wasn't the peaceful, sleeping kind. It was heavy, defensive, controlled. When I had gently opened the door, I saw her curled under blankets, wide awake, facing the wall. Not asleep, avoiding. And that tiny detail hit me harder than any argument ever could. Something was truly wrong. I let her be. You learn with teenagers, pushing too hard at the wrong moment can break a bridge instead of building one. But as the day went on, I watched her pull away even farther. When she finally came out of her room, she wore a hoodie even though it was warm inside. She kept her sleeves tugged over her hands. She junked when the toaster popped. She flinched when the dog barked. My daughter wasn't just hiding bruises. She was hiding fear. But fear of what? Or of who? Around noon, I heard her phone buzz in the living room. She was in the shower. Normally, I would never touch it. I respect her privacy, and I raised her to respect mine. But something in my stomach twisted, something that felt like intuition being choked by dread. The phone vibrated again and again and again. Too many messages in too little time. When I got close enough, I saw the notifications light up. Unknown number. One after another after another. My hands started shaking. I didn't open anything. I didn't unlock her phone. I didn't break her trust. I just looked at the notifications on the lock screen. And what I saw made my blood run cold. You think you can ignore me? Pick up the damn phone. You owe me. Don't make me come there. Don't make me come there. I swallowed so hard my throat clicked. I looked toward the bathroom door. The sound of the shower was steady. She was washing her hair, unaware that a piece of her private fear had slipped into the open. I set the phone down exactly where it had been, and that's when I felt it, a shift inside me. A kind of mama bear instinct I hadn't felt in years. The kind that says, this is the moment everything changes. When she came downstairs, I tried to act normal, but I'm sure I didn't pull it off. "Sweetheart, is everything okay?" Her eyes didn't meet mine. "Yeah, I'm fine." She said it too fast, too casually. Anyone else would think nothing of it, but a mother always hears the crack behind the words. "I didn't eat dinner last night, and you barely touched your breakfast." "I'm just not hungry." Another wall, another lock, another rope pulling her farther away from me. She picked up her backpack. "I'm going out for a little bit." I stepped in front of her so gently she didn't even see it coming. "Who with?" "Just friends." "Mom?" "What friends?" Her jaw tightened. "Why are you asking so many questions?" "I'm your mother. It's my job to ask questions." Her eyes met mine for the first time, and in that instant, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. She was scared of something and trying to protect me from it. That realization burned. Please talk to me. I'm not your enemy. She looked at the door, then back at me, then down at her shoes. Ah, I can't. The way she said it, almost trembling, it wasn't defiance. It was desperation. And that was the moment the shift happened. The turning point. The moment I decided I would no longer sit back and wait for her to come to me. I was going to her. Even if it meant walking into a place I'd never wanted to be. That evening, she stayed out later than usual. The sun set, the streetlights turned on, the dog whined at the back door. I made dinner, but neither of us really ate. By 9 p.m., my chest was tight with worry. I tried calling her, no answer. I texted, no response. By 10:30, my hands were shaking again. I didn't want to be the overbearing parent. I didn't want to be the mom who ignored the signs until it was too late. So I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and I followed the only lead I had, a name. A name I'd heard her whisper on a call once months ago. Derek. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he meant to her. But something deep inside me whispered that I needed to find out. I started driving through the places she usually hung out. The coffee shop, the little grocery store parking lot, the park by the river. I was about to circle back home when I saw something that made my stomach drop. Her backpack. Sitting on the sidewalk, leaning against a bench. And next to it, her phone. The same phone that had been lighting up with threats earlier that day. But nowhere was she. I slammed the car door so fast I barely remembered to lock it behind me. Hello? I called out. Sweetheart? Nothing. A jogger passed by. I held up the backpack. Did you see a teenage girl around here? He shook his head. Not recently. Not recently. Not recently. The words echoed in my head like a bell tolling. I picked up her phone, again, without unlocking it, and the moment I touched it, it vibrated. Unknown number. Again. I didn't even think. I answered. I put the phone to my ear, but before I could say a word, a voice, deep, angry, and far too old to be talking to a teenager, growled through the speaker. Where the hell are you? I told you not to disappear on me. I froze. Every part of me froze. My hand, my breath, even my heartbeat. This man, this stranger, had no idea he was talking to a mother. I know you hear me, he snapped. You better get back here before I decide you don't need that pretty face of yours. The world tilted. The sky, the bench, the parking lot, everything blurred. Pretty face? Threats? Anger. This was not a classmate. This was not a teenage boy. This was a grown man. A man talking to my daughter like she belonged to him. Something inside me cracked open, something fierce, something terrifying, something that came straight from the deepest part of motherhood. I dropped my voice low. Who are you? Silence. Then, who the hell is this? A mother, I said, my voice trembling with controlled rage. And you have 5 seconds to tell me where my daughter is. He laughed. Actually, laughed. Oh, he said mockingly. So you're mommy? The way he said it made my skin crawl. You listen to me, he continued. Your girl and I have business. She owes me, and you don't want to get in the middle of that. Business? Owes me? My stomach twisted. Drugs? Money? Manipulation? Control? What had he pulled her into? You stay away from my daughter, I growled. If you touch her, I swear. The line went dead. Just like that. Cut. but not before I heard something faint in the background. A girl crying. My daughter. Fear doesn't always paralyze you. Sometimes it sharpens every instinct you have. I called the police, told them everything. The messages, the threats, the phone call, the fact that she was missing. They moved fast, faster than I expected. Officers searched the area. One asked me if my daughter could be using substances. Another asked if she had older men in her life. Another asked if she had a history of running away. I felt exposed, judged, blamed. But I didn't care. I would walk through fire barefoot if it meant finding her. After an hour of searching, an officer shouted from across the park, "We found something!" I ran toward him so fast I nearly fell. In the bushes, partially hidden, was her necklace. The one she wore every single day, the little silver heart I'd given her for her 14th birthday. Snapped. Like someone ripped it off. My knees almost buckled. "She's nearby," the officer said. She has to be. Nearby wasn't close enough for me. Not until I had her in my arms. Minutes later, though it felt like hours, a flashlight beam hit something behind a cluster of trees. A small shape. Huddled on the ground. Shaking. I didn't need to see the face. I knew instantly it was her. "My baby," I whispered, sprinting so fast the officers had to catch up. She was curled against the tree trunk, hugging herself. Hoodies soaked with tears. Her knees scraped, a bruise blooming across her cheek. When she saw me, her whole body broke. "Mom," she sobbed, collapsing into my arms. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I held her so tightly, I felt my arms shake. "You're safe," I whispered into her hair. "You're safe now. I've got you. I've got you." She clung to me with both hands. "He said he would hurt me if I didn't do what he wanted," she choked out. "I couldn't tell you. I couldn't." "You never have to protect me from something like this," I said through tears. "Never." "He said I owed him money. He said he could ruin my life. He said he would come to the house." I shook my head fiercely. "No one is touching you again. Do you hear me? No one." As I held her, officers called for backup. Paramedics checked her. Another team went looking for the man she had been terrified of. But in that moment, none of that mattered as much as one thing. My daughter was alive. In my arms, breathing, safe. For the first time in months, she finally broke. And I finally understood. This was the turning point. Not the phone call, not the threats, not even finding her necklace in the bushes. The real turning point was this moment. My daughter crying into my chest, letting herself be small again, letting herself be held, letting me be her mother. Everything after this, every step forward, every piece of healing, every decision would come from this moment, because this was the night my daughter stopped hiding, and the night I stepped fully, fiercely, unapologetically into the fire for her. The hours after we found my daughter were a blur. Blue and red lights reflecting against wet pavement, officers speaking in low voices, paramedics shining lights into her eyes, asking questions neither of us were ready to answer. But through all of it, she clung to my sleeve like a little girl again. It broke my heart. And it mended something too. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't pretending to be strong. She wasn't hiding her pain behind teenage sarcasm or cold silence. She was letting me carry her weight. And that was the first step toward healing. At the hospital, a female officer sat beside us while we waited for the doctor. "You did the right thing calling us," she told me. "A lot of parents hesitate." I shook my head. "I didn't know. I should have known earlier." "No," she said firmly. "This kind of man is skilled. He targets young girls. He makes them feel responsible for his behavior. He uses fear as a leash." Leash. The word twisted my stomach. My daughter ignored the conversation, staring at her hands. Her knees bounced. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I touched her shoulder gently. She didn't pull away this time. "Sweetheart, you're safe now." She nodded but didn't speak. Sometimes trauma doesn't come out in words. It comes out in the absence of them. The doctor finally entered. He checked her bruises, her vitals, her breathing. Then he asked her quietly, "Did anyone hurt you physically? Did he hit you?" She shook her head. "But he scared you," the doctor continued. A tear rolled down her cheek and she nodded again. "Fear leaves marks too. Just not the kind you see on an X-ray." The doctor turned to me. "She's physically okay. Exhausted, dehydrated, but she'll recover. Emotionally, she'll need support." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She'll get it. I promise." And I meant every syllable of that sentence. While we were signing discharge papers, an officer approached. "We found him." My daughter's grip on my arm tightened instantly. "He was hiding behind a closed auto shop on the east side. We have him in custody. He won't come near her again." My daughter let out a shaky breath like she'd been holding it for days. But trauma isn't logical. Even though she was safe, fear still clung to her like smoke. "Can we go home now?" she whispered. I nodded and led her out of the hospital like she was made of glass. When we got home, she didn't go to her room. She went straight to mine. She crawled into my bed without a word, curled up on the side closest to the wall, and pulled the blanket over her shoulders. I sat beside her and stroked her hair the way I used to when she was little. Her breathing trembled, then steadied. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked. "You don't ever have to go through something like this alone again. Nothing you did was wrong. Nothing you did made this your fault. Do you hear me?" Her eyes glistened. "But I lied to you. Because you were scared. Fear makes people do things they never thought they would. That's not your shame to carry." She wiped her cheek. "He said he'd hurt you if I told anyone. I'm a lot stronger than he thinks." That made her almost smile. Almost. She stayed in my bed for 3 nights. 3 nights where she barely slept unless my hand was resting gently on her back. 3 nights where nightmares woke her up crying, shaking, apologizing for things she never should have apologized for. 3 nights where I realized just how deep she had fallen before anyone noticed. On the 4th morning, she came into the kitchen wearing one of my old sweaters. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, but something in her posture had changed. She looked lighter. Not healed, no. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but the weight she carried wasn't crushing her anymore. "Mom?" she said quietly. "Yes, sweetheart? Can we talk?" Those 3 words were everything. We sat at the table. No phones, no distractions, just mother and daughter. She took a deep breath. "I met him online months ago. It was stupid. I thought he was 17. He said he was. He acted like he understood me. He listened to me more than anyone else. I didn't know he was older until it was too late. My heart clenched. She twisted her fingers nervously. When he asked for pictures, I thought I had to. And then he wanted more. And then he wanted to meet. And when I said no, he started threatening me. He said he knew where we lived. He said he'd tell my school. He said he'd hurt you. I reached for her hand. You were manipulated. That's what predators do. She nodded, but her chin trembled. I didn't know how to get out. You couldn't. Not alone. Her tears fell again, but this time she didn't hide them. Mom, I was so scared. I know, baby, but you're not alone anymore. Over the next few days, everything moved quickly. Detectives interviewed her gently. She told them what she could. They said she was brave. They said she helped protect other girls by speaking up. She didn't believe it at first, but I saw it, the tiny spark inside her when she realized she wasn't just a victim. She was a survivor. We met with a counselor recommended by the hospital, a warm, calm woman with a soothing voice. During the first session, my daughter barely spoke. During the second, she said a few sentences. During the third, she cried so heavily she had to be held. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days she woke up strong. Some days she couldn't leave her room. Some days she laughed. Some days she sobbed. And every day, I sat outside her door, letting her know I wasn't going anywhere. One afternoon, a few weeks later, she came into the living room holding a cup of tea. Mom? Yes? Can we delete that account? The one he found me on? My eyes softened. Of course. And can you help me change my number? Absolutely. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we can put a lock on the gate and cameras? We'll do all of that. A small smile tugged at her lips. She was reclaiming her life, piece by piece, choice by choice. Every step she took back toward herself was a victory. The trial process began. She didn't have to testify in person, thank God. The evidence was strong. The police had his messages, his threats, his calls, everything he'd sent her, everything he tried to use to control her. One of the detectives told me quietly, these cases don't always end with justice, but this one will. And it did. He was charged, taken off the streets. My daughter didn't celebrate, not outwardly, but afterward, she sat in the car with me, staring out the window, and whispered, "He can't hurt me anymore." I squeezed her hand so tightly, she laughed through her tears. A month passed, then 2, then 3. One day, she came downstairs wearing jeans and a cute sweater, hair brushed, cheeks naturally rosy instead of tear-stained. "Mom?" she called. I looked up from the dishes. "I'm going out with friends, real ones." A lump formed in my throat. Not fear this time, but relief. She noticed and smirked. "I'll text you. A lot. I promise." I laughed. "I'd appreciate that." Before she left, she hugged me. Not the stiff, embarrassed teenager hug. A real one. A tight one. A thank you without saying thank you one. "I love you, Mom," she whispered into my shoulder. My eyes stung. "I love you more." And then she walked out the door, not scared, not broken, not hiding in a hoodie, but reclaiming her world again. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like fireworks or sudden breakthroughs. Sometimes healing looks like a girl walking down the driveway with her shoulders a little straighter. Sometimes it looks like a phone without unknown number notifications. Sometimes it looks like laughter returning to a kitchen that had gone silent for too long. Sometimes it looks like a mother sleeping through the night without clutching her phone. But most of all, healing looks like a daughter trusting her mother again. Not because she was forced to, but because she learned, step by step, that she was safe. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't before. You can't always protect your kids from the world, but you can always stand between them and the darkness once you see it. And my daughter? She's stronger than she ever knew, braver than she ever believed, and healing, truly healing, because she finally realized she didn't have to fight alone. And I learned that silence is sometimes the loudest cry for help. And when you hear it, you don't wait. You move, you act, you run straight into the fire for the person you love most. Because that's what mothers do.